Hey everybody, this is Erica, the technology nerd who likes to film stuff, and I have the Galaxy S4 beside me, and it is hour-long review time! So, on the Galaxy S4 here that I have affectionately named Al, I'm going to be covering everything that I can possibly think of, from the build quality, to the screen quality, to the issues, to the differences between the Exynos and the Snapdragon versions. Yes, I have both the phones in hand right now. I'll be talking about the battery life, I'll be talking about what makes the Galaxy S4, so that you can hopefully decide for yourself if this is the phone for you, or should you get something like the HTC One, or maybe even the Galaxy S3 that had preceded it. I have several other phones in hand, such as the HTC One and the Galaxy S3 and the Galaxy Note 2, so that I can do little comparisons here and there to help you decide if this is the ultimate phone for you. So let's go and get into all that, shall we? Before we get into anything else, I want to take everyone around a guided tour of this phone, including all of the sensors. On the very top left here, we have an RGB light sensor. Now, this is supposed to be for ADAPT display. This phone has the ability to detect the ambient light to see if it's red, green, blue. That's what RGB means, red, green, blue. And it can adapt the content depending on what the lighting source is like. To the right here, we have a proximity sensor that does a couple different things. You have an infrared emitter. You can see that it is blinking, and just say that your face is being held close to the screen if you're making a phone call. You will have an infrared beam being emitted at your face. It will bounce off your face and then hit this infrared sensor, and the screen will turn off. So not only are they using this as a proximity sensor, but they're also using it for air gestures. So you can wipe your hand over the phone and you're able to scroll through pictures in the gallery, and it can detect your motion. To the far right, we have a 1.9 megapixel front-facing camera that is not only used for video recording and the dual recording feature, where you can have an embedded picture of your face and also be recording whatever is going on with the back-facing camera. I will get into that later. But this camera also has a few cool other functions, such as being used with Smart Stay. So just say that you are looking at the screen, it can see that you're looking at the screen, and if you're not, then it decides after a certain amount of time to turn off. You've got Smart Scroll, where it can again recognize that you are looking at the screen, and you can either tilt the phone up and down, or you can move your head up and down, and it will scroll through the web page. It also works for Smart Pause, again recognizing whether you are looking at the screen or not. So if you're watching a YouTube video, then it will be playing, and if you turn away from that YouTube video, it will pause it for you so you don't have to miss anything. So that's quite nifty that they've been able to integrate quite a few things into this. We've got a gyro sensor inside this phone that works on 3 axes. That way, if you're playing games that have racing cars, the phone will sense your movement. We also have something similar. It's called the accelerometer. It's being used in walking mate so that anytime you move, it's going to detect your steps, and it's actually incredibly accurate. I will be showing you the pedometer once I get to the S-Health section. It's also got a geomagnetic sensor for the digital compass, so when you are in the Maps application, it's able to tell you what orientation relative to the map that you are in. We've also got a temperature and humidity sensor, so this guy has a thermometer. Finally, a phone that has a thermometer, although I'm not seeing that it's being used in most applications. It's only being used under S-Health underneath the comfort level section. And it's also able to tell you about the humidity. So if it's going to rain that day or if it feels really muggy, it will let you know underneath the comfort level what's going on as you're outside. We've also got a barometer that lets you know about the atmospheric pressure, and that's used for walking mate. We've also got a Hall sensor. I really love this. There is a flip cover that is compatible with the Galaxy S4 by Samsung. You're able to close the lid, and when you close the lid, there is a window. It turns the rest of the display off, and then you just have the clock and the date. So once you open it again, the sensor is able to recognize that the flap is no longer over the display, and it resumes normal screen functions. On the top here, we have an infrared blaster that works with watch on. That way you can change the channels with your phone. I actually find this quite useful. And then for all the other normal things on the phone, we've got a microphone here, we've got a standard headphone jack, we've got a volume rocker here. On the bottom, we've got another microphone. You've got your micro USB port. You've got your power button. You've got a 13 megapixel camera, which I will get into in some pretty good depth. We've got an LCD flash here, single LCD flash. Defacing branding by AT&T. We've got a speaker here on the bottom, which is actually quite nice. I find it to be very clear during gameplay. I will get more into the audio in the audio section. We've got a micro SD card slot that supports officially up to 64 gigabytes. I will be getting into this as well. One thing that I want to note right now for the SD card that is going to make it more useful is that Samsung has released an update for the Snapdragon version, currently the i9505. You're able to install smaller applications onto the SD card. Now, if the application exceeds 50 megabytes, you're not going to be able to install those applications on the SD card. Sadly, that's just something that is an Android standard. So for example, games like Need for Speed that have a lot of extra files that need to be stored somewhere, you're not going to be able to install games like that onto the SD card. So there is a little bit of help there for expanding memory. I made another video about that. I would check out the link in the description if you want to see a little bit more about the memory issues with this phone. We've got our 2600 milliamp hour battery that's been doing okay so far. I've been able to get through the day. And we've got a micro SIM slot that has been doing just fine with those SIM adapters. I haven't had trouble breaking the pins or anything. That is, if you're getting a quality adapter. Inside the back cover, we've got these contacts, these metal contacts for inductive charging. Now this phone doesn't readily support inductive charging. You need to get a separate back cover, which actually has a little bit of thickness. But you can see this place here will have contacts that will be able to come in contact with these guys, and then you can set it down on the key mats and it will charge. So it is of a key standard. But come on, Samsung, you could have at least included an inductive charging back cover that wasn't thicker and at least came with the phone. Now, as for a size comparison, the Galaxy S4 is just a hair thinner than the Galaxy S3. It's just a little bit taller, and the Galaxy S3 is just a tad wider. It's funny because it somehow manages to be just a little bit lighter than the Galaxy S3. But I can say that the slight height increase is welcome because of the 5-inch screen over the 4.8-inch screen on the Galaxy S3. Now here we have an iPhone 5, we have a Galaxy Note 2, and coming into the frame here is the HTC One. Here you can see that the Galaxy Note 2 is the motherlode of all devices in terms of size. Then we have the itty-bitty iPhone 5 here, so it fits somewhere comfortably in between them. As for the HTC One, it is a bit thicker and longer, but it is a bit less wide than both of these. It does feel really nice in hand. It isn't rounded like the Galaxy S3. I did like the Galaxy S3 a little bit better because of that, but honestly, they are both really nice. Yes, I have a custom Iron Man 3 cover. Capacitive buttons are exactly the same, and the home button is just shaped slightly differently. But in terms of real differences, it's really hard to see much. They did change the speaker to the bottom, and I was worried about it getting obstructed here and there, although I haven't had much of an issue. Otherwise, buttons are on the exact same side and nearly the same placement. Headphone jacks are on the same side, only the microphones have really moved. What I actually noticed the most on this device is the change in the back covers. You can see on the Galaxy S3 you have a slight bend here, but it is completely flat on the Galaxy S4. You need to be careful sometimes with cases that you choose. This is the Speakin Ultra Thin Air case. This is a case that I normally really love, but it seems that cases like this that are pop-over and rigid plastic seem to grab a little bit at that battery cover and can even pull it off a bit. You can see what I mean here. It's actually stuck on that battery cover. So for cases, I tend to recommend something that either is not as rigid, hard plastic like silicone. This is the Slim Armor from Speakin SGP, or one of these cases that you can slide over the phone. Now, getting into build quality, yes, the Galaxy S4 is made entirely out of plastic. These band accents here on the side look like they could be made out of metal, but they certainly aren't. And actually, one thing that I want to mention is that they are easy to get finger gunk on, and it ends up looking kind of squidgy, sticky, and they tend to scratch a little bit easily, so that's something that I'm a little bit disappointed with. But otherwise, even though the phone is plastic, it feels very solid in the hand. It does not feel cheap to me. One thing that I am really happy to see is that there is a little bit of a bezel on this phone, and also the glass is flat. When looking at the Galaxy S3, you can see that not only is the glass curved, but you have the glass protruding above the bezel. So if you were to drop the phone, you had a greater chance of hitting and cracking this glass. So I am quite pleased with this, although I'm seeing some variations in the way that the glass sits on the phones. On my phone, in some places, I have the glass that is seated further below the bezel. And then at other parts of the phone, I have the glass that is actually a little bit over the bezel, so that is a little bit odd. But at least it's got some bezel, right? Right? So yeah, that is one of my complaints. I am seeing that there are a little bit of variations with the way that the glass is stuck down. It's only stuck down with adhesive. So also in variations, I'm seeing that the glass has a little bit of a gap between the glass and the bezel, and you can get dust and dirt into there. Mine isn't so bad, but I've seen ones that really get a lot of dust in between. Honestly, just slap this baby in a case and you won't have any problems. So what are my opinions about the build quality on the HTC One versus the Galaxy S4? With the Galaxy S4, I don't really mind all that much that it's plastic. Just say you were to drop this guy or scratch this guy, you can easily just replace that back cover. It's easily removable. On the HTC One, although mine is holding up against scratches pretty well, if you were to drop this guy, it's going to ding, and that ding is going to be in there forever. When it comes to droppability, though, I think the HTC One takes it. I've seen several drop tests now, and while the HTC One does ding when you drop it on the floor, it seems to behave a lot like the iPhone 5, where it stands up pretty well, honestly. Also, check this out. You've got a lot of area on this guy that has metal. It's not just glass all the way around, so you have a lesser chance of hitting directly on that screen and cracking it. Of course, unless it hits face down, but if you drop any phone face flat, I haven't seen a single one survive thus far. So does the Galaxy S4 benefit from being plastic? Well, yeah, I think it does okay against scratches. It's not as heavy, and also it tends to not get completely warm all over the phone. When it's metal, I'm noticing that I feel the heat a lot more with the HTC One than I do on the Galaxy S4. Also, as I mentioned, if you were to drop this phone and you were to chew up this back cover, it's easily replaceable. That's one thing about the Galaxy S4 is that if you do have to do any maintenance on the phone or you're out of warranty because you broke it, it's a lot easier to fix than this guy. This guy has rated so low on taking it apart and putting it back together. You just simply, you can't. You almost ruin the entire phone if you try to take it apart. So for practicality, I think the Galaxy S4 wins. For build quality, it's plastic, but at least it doesn't feel cheap. And if you drop it, at least if you were to ruin the back cover, you can easily take it apart. Now, speaking of damage resistance, let's talk about Gorilla Glass 3. This is the very first phone to actually have Gorilla Glass 3 on it, and I am loving it so far. I have had so many phones that have both had screen protectors on them, screen protectors not on them, because I've been so paranoid about not getting scratches. Gorilla Glass 2 scratches very easily. With my Galaxy Note 2 and even this Galaxy S3, I have a few scratches here and there. I remember when I first got my Galaxy Note 2, as soon as I took it out of the box and put it in my pocket, just a couple hours later I looked at the screen and there were scratches all over the front of the phone. That had made me so angry. But with the Galaxy S4, I only used a screen protector for a very slight amount of time for a review. I have not had a single scratch on this display. I even took it to the beach, and the beach is famous for sand, and sand is so infamous for scratching glass because, well, it has the same hardness on Mohs scale of hardness, so it's going to scratch like crazy. And this guy here is just so resistant to scratches that I don't have a single scratch yet. This is the first phone that I have gotten where I'm like, do I really need a screen protector? I mean, over time, I might get a little scratch here and there, but really, oh my gosh, finally a product that doesn't scratch like nuts. So what is so different about this Gorilla Glass 3? Well, Corning claims native damage resistance, which they basically say means that before they temper the glass, which is a process that allows the extra strengthening of the surface of the glass, during their fusion draw process, they have a very special atomic configuration that was different than before. So supposedly this allows the tempering to make it even more resistant. And also their oleophobic layer that they put on this display helps with abrasion resistance. So they've got a better atomic arrangement of the molecules in this display, and they have a really awesome oleophobic fluorosilane coating, nano coating, that keeps things from being able to scratch it so easily. Does it actually make a difference, though, when you drop it on the floor? No, it doesn't, actually. I've seen so many drop tests. The very first time, if you drop this guy face flat on the floor, it's gonna crack. Just like the Galaxy S3, just like the HTC One with Gorilla Glass 2. If you drop this guy on the floor, it's gonna crack. So mostly, I think this is great for scratches. So, thank you everybody for watching. This has been Erica, the technology nerd who likes to film stuff. Please stay tuned for the next part of the video review. I split up this video review into several different sections. The next one being all about displays. I'm going to be talking about the good points with the Galaxy S4 display, the bad points with the Galaxy S4 display, and of course I'm going to be comparing a few others such as the HTC One and the Galaxy S3. So please rate, comment, and subscribe. Please visit my brand new website. It's called angeloftech.com. You can click right here on the annotation, or you can check out the link in the description. On my website, I release updates, and I also have a special page for the Galaxy S4 review as it starts to unveil. So have a good night, everybody. I will release the rest of the pieces as soon as I possibly can. I hope this section was both insightful and informative. Goodbye.